Welcome into another edition of the Our Coaching Network. He is University of Buffalo head coach Pete Lembo. I'm John Brice of FootballScoop.com. Coach, middle of the season, you're playing all these different days of the week. Here it is a Thursday afternoon, and you're taking time to visit with us. We appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. Yeah, my weeks are all screwed up right now. Um, we actually put signage up in the building when the kids come in every day. And if it's a football Tuesday or a football Wednesday or a football Thursday, because they know what that means. They know what the routine is. They know what the schedule is. Um, that's the blessing and the curse of playing in our league.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that in a minute, but obviously want to start with your first year at Buffalo as the head coach. You just clinched bowl eligibility this season against your former team, Ball State. You waited, I think, about 9 years to get another crack at being a head coach. What's it mean for your program? I know you'll deflect personally. What's it mean to your program to get that bowl eligibility, to get that sixth win in year one?
Yeah, it's huge, first and foremost, because these kids have been through a lot. You know, there was a big exodus here after last season. I got hired really late. I think Bill O'Brien and I were the last two hires in the cycle. And I literally got here the day the spring semester started. So there wasn't much time to put things together. It was really all about embracing the guys that were here and getting everybody on the same page and working together and identifying our goals and just really trying to build the culture and the chemistry and to see how we've been able to do that. And we're a modestly talented team, but I think a lot of the intangibles have allowed us to be competitive and maybe win some games on paper we weren't supposed to win, and hang around in some games like we did the other night and find a way. And it's pretty cool to be bowl eligible here with a couple games left to go.
Yeah, that's big time. And you touched on something I wanted to talk about, something we briefly brought up before the recording started, and that is the chemistry within your program. And that has to be authentic. It can't be faked, especially in this day and age with so much roster churn. You referenced the late nature of your arrival at the University of Buffalo. What do you attribute to having that kind of fulfilling chemistry and culture that would allow you to hang in that game the other night and then get a late score and win it in overtime and get that bowl eligibility?
Well, it's always been about we and us, and that goes back to my days at Lehigh and Elon and Ball State. And, you know, you mentioned the 9 years I was away from being a head coach. Those were great years for me because I was around some really good people, both head coaches, assistant coaches. I'd like to think I was a good resource for those folks, and I certainly learned a lot from them. And in some ways, it was just reconfirming the things that we had already been doing years ago. But there are a lot of things that I learned, different ways of doing things. And I had never been at big time programs before. I had always worked my way up through the small school ranks, spent a lot of time in the Ivy League and the Patriot League. And so a chance to work at South Carolina, a chance to work with Mike Norvell at Memphis and guys like that, it was really healthy for me, almost like going back and getting a PhD. So I felt like this time around, the experience as a head coach combined with all those years recently at different places, I was really personally ready to hit the ground running.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask next is Pete Lembo, the head coach version 2.0. Where do you believe you're a better head coach than you were 9 years ago?
Well, the football side of things that I've been exposed to, you know, coaching special teams in the SEC for 3 years. I mean, it doesn't get any more challenging than that. But recruiting in the SEC, and you know, one of the things that I'd like to think I exceeded expectations with was my contributions at South Carolina in that regard, whether it was tag team and a recruit from the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic with the position coach, or spearheading the recruiting on some certain guys. I learned a lot about what you need to do to be successful, to get the kind of guys to be competitive. And sometimes that's thinking outside the box too, because at South Carolina, you know, you're going to face some challenges, whether it's other SEC schools or even schools like North Carolina when you're going head to head on guys. So that was a great experience for me as well. But to be back at a place like Buffalo, where we have a footprint in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast Ohio and Western Pennsylvania, and even down into the Carolinas and Atlanta, that's familiar territory for me. So it's nice when you're representing a program and you're going places where you've been there before, you've got a lot of long-standing relationships, and hopefully you've built some credibility.
You helped recruit Mitch Jeter to South Carolina, one of the best kickers, really, from an accuracy standpoint in the history of college football. And I live in South Bend, so I see Mitch quite a bit here. But that's just one of your many contributions to South Carolina. You can't talk about Shane Beamer or you without talking special teams. You've long been considered one of the elite STCs in the land. What was it like working with a head coach who has that special teams background, who places that kind of true importance on special teams on a day in, day out basis?
The support I had from Shane was just absolutely phenomenal. He understood the importance of it. He grew up around it. And so to have the time, the meeting time, the access to the staff, all of those things were so important. And it was really cool to see, even going back to our first year at South Carolina, playing aggressive, being willing to take some chances and making some things happen, and how that helped us move that program along. And to see those guys having a really nice year and some really exciting games coming up, I'm really proud of that team, because I really invested everything I had into that program for 3 years, and it was really hard to leave because I had a wonderful job there.
You did, yeah. You guys had it going there, turning a big corner for the Gamecocks this year. But again, a unique opportunity to resume being a head coach. How difficult is it for you now to not want to coach all aspects of special teams?
Yeah, there's a balance in there. Fortunately, those 15 years of being a head coach and having to wear a lot of hats and find that balance between being CEO and still being hands-on with some coaching. At least I've been there, done that. And I'd like to think all the years as a special teams coordinator, because you're building relationships with the entire staff, the entire team. You're really thinking big picture all the time as well. It's been a pretty smooth transition back to being a head coach for me. But when you're at this level, you've got to get involved on campus. You've got to build a lot of credibility for your program in the community. You've got to get out there and do a lot of fundraising and donor relation type things, which I've always enjoyed, but it does pull you away from some of the football. So you've got to have a great staff, and you got to be willing to delegate.
Yeah, I met you a few years ago at one of those kind of social settings, and found you really engaging. And that's why when we were talking about doing the pod this week, Pat said, "Who do you want on?" I said, "Let's try to get Pete Lembo from Buffalo. They just got bowl eligibility." So we're fired up to have you here on the Our Coaching Network podcast. Again, I'm John Brice of FootballScoop.com. You led me into another question I wanted to ask. You talked about the external responsibilities, all the different things that take away from your time. And 9 years ago, there wasn't really an NCAA transfer portal. There certainly was no NIL. What did you do? And obviously you'd seen it, you'd experienced it in the SEC with South Carolina. But what did you do to prepare yourself and your staff to be ready to utilize the transfer portal and to start working and laying the groundwork to expand NIL operations at Buffalo?
Yeah, we're all just so much more familiar with it now, and can sort of expect the unexpected in terms of what's coming. And you realize at this level that if you have some good players, there may be some opportunities for some guys to move up and have access to some resources that they're just not going to have at the group of five level. At South Carolina, some of our very best transfers, a guy like Josh Simon, who's having a great year at tight end, came from Western Kentucky and contributed in a good way a year ago, but now in his second year there, he's becoming a guy that's probably going to be draftable. So that's just the nature of the beast. And so we've got to be ready at any position if we lose a guy to a Power 4 school. And then we've got to be ready to go into the portal, because you don't want to have a young team every year. And whether it's an FCS type player or maybe a guy at a Power 4 school is not playing as much as they'd like to. You know, the nice thing about Buffalo, we've got a great city, a ton of wonderful entertainment and food here. The school itself is the 36th ranked public school in the country. So a guy's going to get a great degree here or a great graduate degree here. And then lastly, our airport, we have direct flights to almost 30 cities, and it's 10 minutes from campus. So when it comes to some of the portal recruiting and the guys that you need to get in and out on visits, this is a place that if you come spend 24 or 36 hours here, you're going to enjoy yourself. You're going to eat well. You're going to have access to a great university. And the transportation piece is probably going to be pretty smooth.
Yeah, and Buffalo's got some dudes in the NFL as well, so you've got that component also going for you. You know, you lead me into another question because you don't want to have a super young team every year, but also you have your restraints within the transfer portal. We're just a couple of weeks away from the early signing period, December 4th through the 6th. Then I guess the portal is open December 9 to 28. How do you juggle those responsibilities? What are the talks like on a day in and day out basis with your personnel and support staff? Because you can't just focus, for better or worse, you can't just focus on your final two games of the regular season against Eastern and Kent State. And by the way, you've got Buffalo still in contention for some MAC possibilities. You're in a three-way log jam with the second best record. So how do you manage all of that?
Well, you have to be really organized, and recruiting is on the agenda every day in a staff meeting. And in fact, right before I hopped on here with you guys, we spent the better part of today's staff meeting talking about our roster and talking about spots that are priorities, talking about our high school commits, talking about potential spots that are open to go into the portal and what those top needs would be. So I'm very involved with our DPP on a daily basis. He does a really good job of keeping me up to date with what's going on his end, even when it comes down to players that are participating in a game and guys that we might be trying the red shirt, or guys that we've got to make the decision to go ahead and play them and burn the red shirt on them. So I think organization, starting with me, and then that trickling down to the entire staff, right down to the support staff, is critical. And, you know, I'm a guy that if you're organized and you're on top of your responsibilities, I'm probably a really good guy to work for. And if you're not organized, we're going to make you that way. And I think that's good for everyone.
I like that. Last two questions. Again, Pete Lembo, head coach at Buffalo. I'm John Brice of FootballScoop.com here on the Our Coaching Network podcast. Super generous with your time. One more about your team and then a fun one coming after that. About the team, you talked about the intangibles, the chemistry, the culture that you like. From a physical standpoint, what do you really like about this team and your inaugural Buffalo staff?
So Ryan Horton is our strength coach, and it's amazing, you know, the relationships that we've all built in this profession. But Dave Feely, who's the Duke strength coach, we took a chance on him when we got to Ball State. He was an assistant at FIU, came up. We had 6 degrees of separation from each other. He's a New Jersey guy. I'm a New York guy. And it was just a wonderful relationship for 5 years. And Ryan Horton and Dave worked together at FIU, and then also worked together at Temple, and have been very close. And, you know, Ryan's his own person. He's not Dave, but philosophically they're very similar. So when we were able to connect the dots on Ryan, I felt like this is the guy to lead our charge in the offseason. And we all know how critical that hire is for any program, and what he's brought to that aspect and how fulfilled the kids are in that area. And then on top of that, we just opened a new 12,000 square foot weight room, which I think a lot of Power 4 schools would love to have. So that doesn't hurt either. But the job we've done with strength and conditioning and how it's helped us keep our team healthy this year. And this is a team that had not won a game in November in 3 years.
Right.
And the fact that we're 2-0 in November, our kids are over the moon about it. They've never experienced it. They've never experienced a MACtion win in November, which is crazy, but it's the truth. And a lot of it goes back to strength and conditioning, tracking the GPS numbers very closely, being willing to adjust our practice schedules, being very collaborative in that approach with our support staff and with the staff. And it's awfully exciting to be here at bowl eligible at this point. And hopefully we can be competitive in these last two games as well.
All right, the last one, a fun one here, because when we talked before, you may or may not remember, I'm a Tennessee native, other end of the state, East Tennessee, but I love Memphis barbecue. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Your favorite Memphis food joint: Rendezvous, Central Barbecue, Gus's Fried Chicken, Germantown Commissary, something altogether different. I don't know.
All of the above, all of the above, but love the dry rub at the Rendezvous and the setting down there in the basement in downtown Memphis. Central Barbecue, the barbecue sauce there, that was an often take home for the family. We lived probably a half a mile from the Germantown Commissary, so that was another popular spot. Right across the street, fancy joint called Southern Social, which was a big date night spot, or if we had friends coming into town, that was often a place that we would take them. But no, wonderful, wonderful city. And we absolutely loved living in Germantown. I was about a 16, 17-minute commute from the Memphis facilities, and we thoroughly enjoyed our 2 years there.
That's fun stuff. Yeah, I say Central Barbecue for the pork nachos, Rendezvous for the ribs. I've got friends who still send me sauces and ribs for Christmas. So anyway, that's fun stuff. Pete Lembo, head coach at Buffalo, bowl eligible as of this week, as of about 48 hours ago. This is John Brice on the Our Coaching Network Football Podcast. Coach, thanks for joining us, man. Good luck the rest of the way.
My pleasure. Anytime.